Hey there, I'm Jody Vance.
And I'm George Affleck.
And it's time for
UnSpun.
So very spontaneous.
I tell you, I just make it up.
That was
I'm
genius.
sure people listening are going, what is going on?
Every time we introduce this podcast, George comes up with a different way of saying
I really shouldn't have done this because it's a nightmare now because the pressure's on.
I love it. Because I'm like, get yourself organized.
There's
I
only
never
so
know.
many ways I can do this.
I never know before. With lots to cover off today.
Yeah.
Like little things.
So much for a quiet summer.
But I brought my boxing gloves because we're going to duke it out a little later. But let's start with a big motion that passed at Vancouver City Hall, something that you were tweeting about, George, at George_Affleck. Do it. George_Affleck on Twitter, at Jody Vance, Jody with a Y on Twitter, and UnSpun podcast. You should follow us as well.
That's right.
It's a good source and resource to talk about both municipal, provincial, federal, and sometimes global politics. Today we're going to cover off the municipal and the federal for sure. A couple of municipalities, actually. Let's start with Vancouver. As I said, motion passing unanimously. The nighttime economy. Can you give just a little synopsis of what the nighttime economy is?
Yeah, this came from Councillor Lisa Dominato, and it's really about creating, for the city staff to go in and analyze the nighttime economy in every form it possibly can be. So everything from the nightclubs of Granville, which we all talk about all the time, to its effect on women and children and across the city, what positive, negative impacts, what should we be doing as a city to improve the nighttime economy, what things do we need as far as transit, all these different things, all the different components of what a nighttime economy is made of.
Because Vancouver used to be a city that went to sleep pretty early.
Yeah.
Except for those of us who were at the bar working, because I was part of the nighttime economy in the late 80s, early 90s, making my way through school. And, there was a small group of people that worked that nighttime economy. It's booming now. It's time to harness it and support it.
The job I had when I was at university was cleaning buses from 11 o'clock at night until 6 in the morning. And so I had to go and get from downtown to the end of Granville Street where these buses were parked and clean them all night long. And so getting there and from and being safe and all those things.
Yeah.
It was in this weird industrial area. I understand the nighttime economy from that perspective too, which is part of this. So it'll be interesting. It's actually a job that the Vancouver Economic Commission is finally something they can do with all the millions they get from taxpayers.
How many people are in the communications
even though there was 43 communication staff at City Hall.
Last week it was Prosecco, this week it's just water. Cheers.
Cheers to that.
43.
This is water, yeah. It's not gin?
Not today, because you were out late last night. Okay, so that dovetails nicely
Yellow,
into
by the way. Whoop, whoop.
How was it?
Yeah, it was good. It was fun.
Mr. Blue Sky?
I mean, really, it could have been any guy in a wig and a pair of glasses on the stage with a beard. Because you really get, Jeff Lynne is kind of...
electric.
A lot of singers covering his butt on his quality of his voice. But it was fun. It was fun. Anyways.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Enjoying the nighttime out on the town on a Wednesday.
That's right. There you go.
There you go. But this morning, so as of taping, we tape on Thursdays. As of this morning, Translink, the much-awaited announcement.
We're all praying for something.
Kind of affects the night
economy. Find a solution,
right?
Yeah.
We were expecting, at the very least, we're getting extended SkyTrain hours on the weekend. Must be, maybe even 24.
That's a no-brainer, right?
Right? 24 hours on the weekend. That would be amazing. 24 hours, even more than the weekend, would be amazing. Translink today. None of the above. None of the above. Can't use SkyTrain.
Surprising. I thought they could have found a way to get the weekend thing. I was reading the story and they're saying the business case isn't there. And while I respect the operations and the business of Translink and being careful about how they spend their money, this is an issue obviously. And people in the weekends need to get home. And if we had Uber, hello, anybody? We'd be able to have a safer way of getting around.
Imagine the night economy and the economy in general, but specifically the night economy. For so many of us, I say this week in, week out, we don't go out anymore because we can't get to where we want to go and back safely. And particularly women, groups of women. I don't even necessarily feel safe in a cab now because they'll tell you it's cash only or get out here or no, I've decided I'm not taking you there. There are some amazing cab drivers in the city, so I'm not knocking everybody, but there have been some crazy ones in recent, and it's a conversation amongst women in particular,
Yeah,
not to
I know,
be
and we were talking about this
anti-guy
before,
safety.
because we talked about it, because they're adding buses. They're adding
Yeah.
buses. And so what's the problem with buses? That's a good thing, right?
Not necessarily, because at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, I don't want to be standing at a bus stop. A SkyTrain station is well lit, it's clean, there's security cameras, there's a process, you have to pay to go in, you get there, you feel it, there's security people present, there's transit police. Standing at a shady bus stop on any street in Vancouver, I don't care whether it's west side, east side, north, doesn't matter. As a woman, especially when by yourself, it can feel like a very vulnerable place to stand in a quasi-lit bus shelter, waiting for a bus that might come in 30 minutes, because they aren't coming every 5 minutes.
It's an important perspective, and I think that,
Thank you for that, by the way.
Yeah, well, and that's what's the solution for this cleaning issue that they have with these trains?
Right, that's the
That's
explanation,
the
right?
excuse, which is understandable. We have a really great transit, or SkyTrain system with its automated system, which saves us millions on
Cleaning.
on wages and things.
Cleaning
like
the
that.
tracks. So what are they cleaning? Is
Well, I
it
think that
leaves
it's only
and debris
cleaning, but
or-
they're also making sure the tracks are not in disrepair.
Right.
And
And that takes 4 hours a night.
They say it's 4
Every
hours a night.
night.
They need to shut it down. I think it's part of it's also automated for cleaning. So and there's only one track. So perhaps if they were to double track in certain areas, would that be something that we could do? Twinning, so that this machine could go past trains. You know, I know when I lived in Denmark, there was a night train that would, you know, it would only once an hour, you know, as opposed to every 15 minutes or something. But
at
you
least
really
it's
hadn't, and there was lots of people waiting for it at the train station, and. So yeah, I mean, it just seems like it's disappointing. I'm sure it certainly sounds like it's disappointing to you as a woman.
It is.
But I think for anybody who's downtown on Fridays and Saturday nights and wants to get home to Surrey or wherever you're coming from, this does suck for sure.
Maybe, though, I think that's a genius idea on the twinning piece, because maybe when talking about the new Broadway subway line, or whether there might one day be trains to the Fraser Valley, extended out to, you know, as far as Chilliwack and beyond, or Tawasin. Oh my gosh, Tawasin, White Rock, wouldn't that be great? Maybe they should build all things with enough space, at least, for more than one track, because that is another thing that kind of hoops us, is there is only one track in each of these systems, unlike New York subway, where you can take the blue train or the red train or the D train or the E train.
Stacked on top of each other.
Right, so if
sometimes.
this one isn't working right now, it might be a little bit longer for you, but you can still get to where you're going, where we don't have that.
There is such a challenge in this region about spending money on transit vehicles. Taxpayers have no problem spending $40 billion building highways or whatever, but to spend $1 billion twinning parts of a track along SkyTrain, you can imagine what people would say about that. They would be so angry that $1 billion was being spent on twinning a track.
Unless they did the full cost of twinning the entire track, and then, without it doing a massive expensive study, they decided to twin, like you said, just a portion of the track that gets the bulk of people to a certain area that maybe could be more secure, well-lit bus
I'm not
loop.
an engineer, but it
You're
seems
pretty
like
smart.
an interesting solution.
You're pretty smart.
Perhaps we can get somebody to send us some information on that via Twitter.
I would like that.
Give us some links. Tell
I
us
don't
why can't this be done?
I don't want to study on it. I want to be told what the problem is.
Yeah.
I want Translink maybe to let us know truly how much maintenance is needed, because maybe
I'll tell
they
you, it's
could
not good PR for them. When you talk about spin, this is not good PR for Translink. This is bad for them. I don't think there's anybody out there that's thinking, why, what, huh?
But because I think there are
Seriously?
people like us saying we need this,
Yeah.
at least on Friday and Saturday. Maybe you do the maintenance that those nights would have been done between 5:30 a.m. and 9 a.m. on Sunday. Like maybe when there's no rush hour.
Guess what, people? You don't have a train till 11 o'clock.
Add extra buses.
morning or something.
Add extra buses on that day, on that morning. I'd be fine with standing at a bus stop in broad daylight on a Sunday morning. No problem.
The business case is not there, Jody.
I know. So, UnSpun, continuing on, at the Orca BC on Twitter. Of course, you download anywhere you get your podcasts, but you get us weekly at theorca.ca. I had a bunch of people going, what's orca.ca? I can't find you. I'm like,
Was that Doug McCallum imitation you just did?
Oh, no, Mr.
What?
Mayor, I didn't.
What?
He's got some detractors
What's going
right
on in
now.
Surrey?
Actually, he's got a defector. Another defector, Brenda Locke, today announcing that
Another
she
one
is.
bites the dust.
Explain.
Well, I mean, she had a whole issue related to something Doug McCallum said, accused her of fear-mongering.
In a press release.
In a press release. She's accusing him of centralizing power in the mayor's office. Sounds like Vancouver, with Vision Vancouver. His coalition's falling apart, obviously. Next thing you know, you'll sort of see them gunning to be, the next mayor. We've talked about that before.
Safe Surrey Coalition, which was
Surrey Coalition.
In the last municipal election in Surrey, we're all like, what is that?
Yeah, it's a one-off party, and it'll disappear off.
It was Doug McCallum saying,
just like Vision's disappeared off the earth in Vancouver.
But they lasted longer. But Doug McCallum's Safe Surrey.
Gregor.
That was PR. Safe Surrey Coalition basically said we're going to get rid of the light rail, LRT. It's going to be SkyTrain. We're going to get rid of the RCMP, and we're going to put in a municipal police force. But when he got to I'd like a canal.
Yeah.
That's when people are like,
we've had that idea in Vancouver, by the way. Yeah, I know.
Falls Creek, the creek?
Yeah, I'm going across to Cole Harbor or something. It was a weird design. It was kind of cool, but anyways, yeah.
We're good.
But you know what? It's more about what's going on in the back room, right? This is caucusing. We've talked about this before with the Jody Wilson-Raybould stuff. Caucusing is it's the hardest thing to. That's a weird combination of words I just put together there. Caucusing is not easy. It is.
Explain that though. For someone watching right now, is like, I don't even know what caucusing is.
Well, when you have a political party, and then you have sometimes it's the whole party. In the case of municipal politics, in my party, the NPA that I was a member of, and COPE and Vision, they meet and they decide on things. Or they have debates themselves.
Your pillars.
You have your group. You decide on what your goals are. Whatever it might be. Sometimes they come together for just an election, or sometimes they're there all the time. And so the case of federally with Jody Wilson, that she left the caucus and then she left the party, and
she's an independent.
She's an independent now. And that's kind of what this councillor in Surrey's done. She's left the party that just was invented about 2 years ago. And if your caucus falls apart, then the party starts to fall apart. It becomes very difficult to get reelected because you can't keep your team together.
The optics are awful.
Yeah, and it's just you start
but the optics
fighting
for
each other.
Trudeau were awful.
Yes, and
with
sometimes
Jody Wilson,
in those cases they're public. A lot of caucusing that goes badly is not public. It's subliminal, or like for example, the Vision that their caucus, they were a tight caucus for years, but you could see towards the end, although it was very subtle in council, that their caucus had fallen apart. That there were some infighting going on that was sort of popping out into council, and you could sort of see it, and you're going, okay.
Little passive aggressive.
The wheels
action
are off
over
the
there.
bus here on the old Vision Vancouver, and that's an opportunity for the NPA to win the election, which they didn't do. But the party.
You should have run. Everybody wanted you to run.
So really, anybody could have run and should have been mayor, but they didn't, and I don't know.
So what went wrong there?
Unity, I don't think was there with the NPA.
They didn't have their pillars in a row.
They didn't have the team wasn't on the same path.
Yeah.
They weren't united in their goals. You can see how they're voting in council. Nobody can predict how things are voting. So caucusing is really important. Surrey, these political parties that pop up out of nowhere, they survive. There's a reason we have political parties that last for a long time, like the BC federal Liberals and the federal Conservatives, and even they've had iterations of them, but because they stay connected, they stay united.
Can I mention something about the Conservatives? This just popped into my head because yesterday I was filling in for Linda Steele on CKNW. Charles Adler is in the building getting ready for Charles Adler Tonight, the national show, and he brought a bunch of us, a couple producers, Eric Chapman and myself, over to his desk and said, "Have you seen this?" And he brought up a digital ad that was blasted out to certain people, I guess, on social media, that is a photo. It was done by the Progressive Conservatives, and it was like Justin Trudeau is against pipelines or something was the verbiage, but the picture of Justin Trudeau had been doctored for him to look of different ethnicity. Is that a politically correct way to say a very politically incorrect photo? And Charles Adler was like, "This is a dog whistle. If this was a television commercial, everybody would be in a huge uproar because basically he looks like he might be Middle Eastern or South Asian." And
so he thinks they're pulling the race card. They're trying to fear mongering based on race.
And so is that
I don't know. I haven't seen this ad. So, is race the issue? Because you look at what's going to be the big issue in this next election. Everybody was predicting it was going to be the environment. Well, I think the Conservatives kind of shut that down by saying,
unveiling their
and saying we believe in climate change. Now you're like, whoa, what? Wait a minute.
Yeah.
So it's very strategic on their part. They did their polling and they realized, you know what?
They got their caucus together.
They got their caucus together, and they to pull that. So now, what's the next issue? Is it? You can see the polling in general that we've seen that people are saying we're letting too many people into our country, and it's unfortunate.
And we're seeing that all over the place. I mean, that
the
was
hate in other countries is. Really
that was one of the number one things in the first of the two Democratic debates last night. Immigration was a huge piece of it, in terms of pushing back against the real sort of visceral stance of the Republican Party in the United States. That you had a number of the candidates at the Democratic debate just all of a sudden switching into speaking Spanish. To try and say, I can feel the pain of the asylum seeker, because there's a base of people in the United States that are like, Democrats want open borders, and there are people in Canada that are like, those liberals are just opening up the borders to everybody. And it's like, well, where do you draw the line between somebody who is seeking asylum, who is really fleeing possible certain death, and those who are just, looking to, like, people locally will move into a co-op at a much cheaper rate because they'll just say, well, I'll get a job that pays me a little bit less, I'll get the co-op, it'll be super cheap. Playing the system is my point, and it's not about race
and using the fear card, which is common in politics, and we've talked about this before, but clearly if that's the approach.
You mean in the election piece?
In the election, yes. Is this something, is it going to be about race, and is it going to be about fear?
Because that's worked down there.
It's worked in many countries. It's working.
Yeah, well, Denmark just made rules.
Well, they had quite the fascist party got almost enough in their proportional representation to get in, but they have a socialist party, and she's all focused on the environment, which is interesting. But yeah, Denmark has very, very strict rules about immigration. Very strict.
Strict rules about everything. My grandmother is Danish, and I got to go to Copenhagen. It's beautiful. It's the cleanest place you've ever been.
You're not allowed to wear any hijab.
Nothing. You have to be Danish. You have to live in Denmark and be Danish.
And if you leave Denmark for a long time, you lose your citizenship.
Right, but if you come there and you assimilate's a bad word, but really in Denmark, if you embrace the Danish culture and the Danish way of life, and they take like 80% of your money, the taxes are ridiculous, but you're totally taken care of on the other side. So it's like it's
an interesting.
How much of the pie are you going to hold on to? So it's a bigger conversation.
But it's going to be interesting.
Canada.
We're going to see what's going to be. They're going to be testing these things, these advertisements or whatever it is, to see what resonates. They're testing this stuff, and then once they find the one that really works, you'll start seeing it in your Facebook feed all the time.
Please, Canada, do not become.
I know.
Radicalized.
We have a 4%
racist
unemployment rate. I mean, it's a record lowest rate of unemployment in our country right now. We're desperate for people to come here to work.
Desperate for people.
We don't. Our economy relies on immigration. We don't have immigration. Everything starts to fall apart.
When the foreign worker program changed, because I've got tons of people in my family and inner circle who are in the restaurant business, service business. They run restaurants. They open restaurants. They can't find employees since the foreign worker program was changed.
Because of a PR nightmare that happened with regards to, I think it was a bunch of people working in the mining industry, was it, or something, who were being paid
remarkably low.
Yeah, slave wages.
And then they said people are coming for our jobs, and these jobs should go to Canadians first, and then they changed it,
Nobody
and then
wants those
the
jobs.
Canadians were like, no thanks.
But this is driving automation too, right? This
fair enough.
We can't even, but still, Canada we were built on immigration. The whole country, we're all. I mean, half everybody I know is from somewhere else. Yeah. So
I like that we can unspin this without actually tippy-toeing around it, because it's a tough conversation to table. But I think when we talk about it, maybe we're arming people around dinner tables and sitting at the pub and hoisting a beer. We need to talk about this stuff, because the headline fear-mongering stuff is going to get us all absolutely nowhere. Because some of the people,
it doesn't end well
generally, but it's happening here.
Countries.
It'd be so naive to think that it's not happening here. It's happening here, and that's why when Charles Adler showed me that digital ad, it was like, wow, okay, well, there's that.
They will deny it to the.
Of course they will.
To the death.
They have to.
That one for sure.
Okay, ready to go? Ready to spar?
How much time do we have?
We were up rather early this morning, George and I, going back and forth.
I'm always up early, but we don't usually text early.
So am I.
Yeah.
Well, it started with reading your tweet, because you had retweeted something about, give the backstory. Everybody knows the old Denny's that we all would go to after Kit's Pub, late night fries and gravy, delicious. That beautiful prime piece of real estate on West Broadway. What is it?
Almost
just
almost
Hemlock?
at Granville, sort of between Granville and Oak.
Yeah. So that piece of property is going to be developed.
Yes, the hope it will be developed in this city. I think 26 stories is the it's
supposed to be 18.
Early, yeah, it's supposed
16.
to be, it's zoned for 16, I think.
Yeah.
And they want to put it at 26 stories.
28.
So they're consulting with the community. 28 stories. 26, 28. Okay.
It's zoned
Which
for
downtown
16.
is like a small podium.
That's not downtown.
I'm just
totally
saying.
good with downtown being built up.
But okay, so first of all, there's many parts of the story that we're going to go around and around.
Okay,
here.
so get us.
So first of all, let's focus on height. And
let's focus on the hospice and the Granville and the Kiefer and the. Okay.
Well, the first is the height of Broadway. First of all, I don't understand why this project is even at this stage. Right now, there's which was approved by the council that I was in, which is the only development or planning process besides a city plan, which we'll see finished in 2090. The only planning process going on right now, community planning, is the Broadway line, the Broadway strip, from basically Main Street all the way down to Arbutus. The staff are coming back with a big report about that whole thing, which includes height and density and all those things. So I'm not sure why this development is pushing this forward at this stage, because I just don't.
Because it would be a one-off.
Yeah, but
or is it the first of a domino to fall?
Well, I hope so, because I think Broadway is the perfect place for height, especially in that area from Cambie over to Arbutus. Why wouldn't you want to? There's many
towers. Do you have
towers.
a height cap, or do you like go 50?
There are
go
we
70.
have view corridors and we have view cones in the city.
But it's not about views. Corridors. It's about the neighborhood feeling, right?
I live in Yaletown in a 33-story building. In Yaletown, people say, "Oh, Yaletown," but it's the street level. It's lovely.
My turn.
You're wrong, though.
Okay, I'm wrong before I speak. I love him so much. This is for you. You, our faithful viewer, who say, you and George agree on everything. No, we don't.
I'm not saying always height.
Shh.
Okay, go.
Shh.
Yes.
So looking at the difference.
Yes.
Looking at the difference, Burnaby skyline, right? Lots of height. Lots of towers. Downtown, lots of towers. Cole Harbor, lots of towers. Olympic Village, towers but shorter. Right? I'm down for density. I think a 16-story building on lots of 16-story buildings on West Broadway would be just fine. I think a lot of 28-story buildings on West.
Why
and
not?
Finish
why not
my
higher?
damn statement.
Okay, why not higher? Though?
Because when I just drove down West Broadway to come here, right?
Yeah.
And like I said, I love the Ladner model. When you drive down through Ladner, there's tons of density that doesn't jarringly take you from this sort of tower-heavy area into residential, because as we've pointed out many times, we have far too many single-family structures. So I get that. Density is a necessity, but Ladner has found a way to sort of broadly add density without significantly altering the landscape and the mood and the vibrancy of the eye-to-eye on the street. And the bigger the towers, the less interaction with people. You park in the underground parking lot, you get on the elevator, you go to your unit, you come back down. If there's a walk-up or a bigger lobby or there are fewer people, you're more likely to know your neighbors. That's kind of the Vancouver that a lot of people who are NIMBYs are freaked out about losing. And I drove down West Broadway, and they are mostly 4, 6, or 8-story buildings currently. There are 2 that are 14, because I literally stopped at red lights going, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, to have this conversation. Yep. And I looked at them like, you know what, those 14, 12-story buildings, they don't feel like eyesores and jarringly the way driving in Burnaby now, or driving it where Southwest Marine Drive, where the Cambie SkyTrain, look, you can barely handle it, I'm almost done, down at Sky, where these humongous buildings have cropped up.
My ADHD
I know, I'm
are
sorry.
coming out of me.
But I passionately feel that we need to have some middle between, we need to densify, because as you said, we're screaming for people in the city. We're screaming for more people to move here, and people are going to move here. And there is enough space between Main and Arbutus to put a boatload of 16-story buildings that I don't believe that we need a boatload of 28-story buildings. That's just my opinion.
I mean, I'll get specifically to Broadway. I also feel like if you go 2 blocks off Broadway, there are 24-story buildings, or 3. You have the hospital, which is, I don't even know how it's called, 30 stories. So there are lots of buildings just off Broadway that are much higher than 16 stories. So why this compulsion to protect Broadway?
It's a compulsion now.
But the good news is,
Oh,
you know what, we don't have to solve this, because The city staff are already working on this, and they will consult with the community about what the density
Great.
and height will be on Broadway.
Right, because currently
Which brings
5
me
or
back
6
to
becoming
what,
16
exactly,
is more palatable to the majority
Yes.
of the citizens
And
than
we
a 26
should-
to 40-story building.
And we will learn that is as part of that community planning process, which is how it's supposed to work. Contrary to what's the argument by a lot of people about this site on Granville. So I think this site, for example, on Broadway, and if this goes to a public hearing before the Broadway plan is put forward and passed, and that consultation happens or whatever, it's not gonna fly, because we just had a project on Granville by a hospice, which wasn't a tower, it was just a rental townhouses, but the neighbors said it was too dense and it was going to affect the hospice, got turned down by council. And this is a rental project, not affordable rental, but rental, on a busy street, no height.
It was kind of shoehorned in, though.
Yeah,
wasn't that the problem? I don't have an opinion either way on that one, personally.
And it met one criteria, which
Yeah.
was this interim result. We have this policy where if you're on a high density transit, you can add density, basically.
Right.
So that you can usurp the community plan of that neighborhood. And so
You get a mulligan.
So it's a policy that defies another policy, which is what Vision loved doing, because you go, oh well, there's this community plan, but we can just steamroll over that with this. So it didn't pass, which
This might be a record how many times we've mentioned Vision on the podcast.
I know.
It's a good one. Look at how
I
happy
shouldn't,
you are.
because that's the worst thing you do in politics is mention the name of a party, because then it just brings it back to life.
Yeah. No, I don't think you are.
But
I get your point.
So this one didn't pass, and people are, and I've been tweeting out that what does this mean? Because if you look at the vote that happened in council, this was all over the map. Like you couldn't have predicted this vote and how it lay. That half of the MPA one way, half the other way.
Really?
It was green, and the mayor voted for it, and it was interesting. And
I
I
wonder what
think
the debate beforehand was like on that. If everybody went.
well, there was 400 speakers. I think there was something there. 400 people had sent information. 400 to 500 people. I think that 200 speakers signed up. It was one of those crazy. I remember I have post-traumatic stress disorder
That's why you
from
got all
my
upset
public
at me
hearings.
when we were texting back and forth. You're wrong. I'm like, I just want to be heard.
Yes. Anyway, but what's interesting is, okay, the last project and the only project ever that Vision Vancouver voted down at a public hearing was Kiefer in Chinatown. Very controversial because of the height. And it was in Chinatown. And
it's going to be 300 feet.
It's
No, it's going to be such and such. It's going to be
8 stories.
concrete. There's going to be a community center in it.
Yeah,
there's going to be this.
Yeah, social housing, not social housing. And it didn't pass because at that time, Vision was going, we have to find a way to survive. It was in the last year of that term, and they were trying to, in this case, we're at the beginning of a mandate, and I think it's telling of what to predict or what not to predict, how to not predict this council's behavior, which I think is, and I'm not saying it's good or bad, they're like this, people wanted this council, but it has ramifications, and the business community and the development community.
The unpredictability.
And it doesn't matter what kind of developer you are, and I think that I saw Price Tags, Gordon Price wrote a column about this, saying that decision will scare off smaller developers or people who want to build a nonprofit. If they can't look to any kind of consistency, when staff recommends something and they see this happen, well, why would I bother going through that process? I mean, what's the point? I'll go to Chilliwack or wherever.
Just across the border into Burnaby. So
well,
much is happening.
They're changing their ways too, but anyway, so it's interesting times, and I think that people are starting to get really worried about this council being very unpredictable in not in a necessarily positive way. They don't seem to be focused on any. I mean, they say they want housing, but then they vote down housing. So I'm confused.
There's that middle piece.
It's a left-wing council, right?
Right. There's that middle piece, though. It's coming to the table and actually wanting to find a solution as opposed to wanting to have your agenda passed, which was a very Vision.
That's right.
It felt like, as a tax-paying citizen of Vancouver, that it didn't really matter what I was thinking.
No, nothing ever failed except for that Kiefer project. That was the only one.
So my column this week. Just a little plug for the middle. Once again, anti-vaxxers are pissing me off, George.
Yeah, they're...
If you say, I'm not really 100% sure about the safety of vaccines, Jessica Biel, I'm looking at you. Does that make you an anti-vaxxer?
I know she's a viewer.
She is. Justin Timberlake loves me. No, but people saying, well, it's not that I'm an anti-vaxxer, it's just that I'm not 100% sure of the safety of vaccines. You're an anti-vaxxer.
Yeah.
So vaccinate your children. Stop talking about vaccinations that save millions of lives globally. I get very passionate about this.
So you're saying the Surrey Board of Trade, what are you doing?
Surrey Board of Trade. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is one of the biggest anti-vaxxer faces of anti-vaxxer movements that you can find in the world. and he has been invited to be a keynote speaker on the environment. Don't at me. I know he's an environmental visionary, but he's a very vocal anti-vaxxer, and I think we can find another environmental visionary to speak at the Surrey Board of Trade. I think that this backfired on the people that thought this will be good PR, because I don't think it is. Anyways, that's what my column's about. I get a little mad.
I'm totally with you on the vaccination. Just let's get it in those kids and save the family and save the kids and
save the kids sitting beside you that can't get vaccinated.
Yes, yep.
So see that what happened on UnSpun today?
We're a bit feisty today.
Boxing gloves, and then we bring it around and totally agree.
Aw.
He's George. I'm Jody. See you next time.
Bye.